You there?
You said you're going to get unsettling.
You talking to you or me?
Something happened.
Did you have a earbud die or something?
Yeah, I don't know what the hell I was just saying. You
does a good job.
Oh, what the hell is going on? There's two of you in this call.
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
Oh, you really pulled out all the stops for this episode. What the hell? Oh no. What?
Oh, wow. When did that come out?
When did it come out?
Yeah, when was it released?
I have no idea.
Wow,
Came
okay.
back.
Yeah, what had happened actually is a new window opened up because it logged me out for some reason. And then a new window opened up, so there was two windows. Or two tabs. So we entered into the Backrooms. 2 tabs opening up pretty soon. It's like, how many tabs?
You start talking about AI and then, I just realize I'm talking to a voice coming through the computer. Like,
I don't know what's real.
Oh my god.
I don't realize how far down I've really gone.
You're unsettling?
On this episode, we're being joined by...
What backroom versions of ourselves would look like?
Mm-hmm.
You would just be Werner Herzog.
That'd be frightening.
Yeah, so you rewatched Citizen Kane.
Mm-hmm. A CRT TV and a VCR player.
Yeah.
And picked up some VHSs, so one of those was Citizen Kane.
Nice. So good.
Always fun.
Citizen Kane, of course, made by Orson Welles when he was 25 years old, and Backrooms, made by Kane Parsons when he was just 20.
Wow. Quite the equation. Let's see what kind of career this kid has.
Mm-hmm.
Youngest director to go to 100 million at box office or something like that.
Yeah, we're recording this after a weekend when the new Star Wars movie was third at the box office behind this film Backrooms and Obsession, which has been the biggest word of mouth surprise hit in quite a long time. People are comparing it to Jaws and stuff like that, just because its growth week over week has been pretty unprecedented.
These back-to-back movies, it's kind of wild. Generating a lot of talk, a lot of people talking about it online. It's been interesting to see.
Yeah, I definitely see. It'll be interesting to compare them. I think in this episode we'll get spoilery about Backrooms. We'll maybe try to avoid spoilers on Obsession unless we want to talk more in depth about that film, but they both seem to be giving people something that they want, especially these young audiences. But you look at the Letterboxd scores, and Obsession seems to be giving people what they want to a much greater extent than Backrooms is. I think Backrooms right now is at a 3.4 on Letterboxd, and Obsession is at a 4.2. And
wow.
Just the groundswell for Obsession is pretty crazy. I think they're both flawed films, but they're both definitely interesting, worth watching and thinking about. It makes sense why they're doing so well right now. You might want to go to the film experts for your opinions about new 2026 films. I think this is our first 2026 film that we're talking about on the pod. But yeah, some like it unauthorized.
I'm Jay Brooks Young.
And I'm Zach Jones.
What was your experience going and seeing this one, Zach? I heard you brought a whole gaggle of people to go see Backrooms.
Yeah, every Thursday I do a film night. Every Thursday I can, and so a group of friends we all watch on the projector different movies from different times, but occasionally a movie comes out that looks interesting, and so we'll go to the theater instead. And so that's what we did, and it was fun because some people knew about the lore of this that Kane Parsons created over the last several years. And some people didn't know anything, really. So it's kind of fun for like certain people to be like, well, he's really young and, you didn't. So it's kind of fun. I watched sitting next to me, just to the right of me, is a friend who hasn't seen too many movies, and relatively. And he didn't watch the original Backrooms video that Kane released. So it was kind of fun to see his reaction, knowing next to nothing about it. I think certain moments of the movie, like when you first enter into it and you see it and you see the space and you kind of wander through it, or the jump scare moments, things like that, I think Kane had done and sort of repeated some things that he did in the first one in the movie. So they didn't have that same kind of novel effect that they did the first time. One could watch the YouTube version, but sitting next to me was a guy who wasn't familiar with that. So it was kind of, I could relive it vicariously in some sense. But yeah, I think it's one of those movies. I think Obsession 2, like you said, they're fun experiences in a way that doesn't feel, though they may be using the same tropes that movies have used, they feel like they're kind of getting at something slightly different. Like the experience of them feels more novel, even if the format and the layout all are cut and paste from something like A24 or even previous movies. I have one thought, which we'll get into, about the trajectory of the characters in Backrooms and what they, in a movie, I think they took great inspiration from. But yeah, I think overall, it's just fun to go to the theater seeing something that doesn't have, like, people struggle to place an exact similarity to. Like, you could say, like, okay, this is a liminal space horror. And when Backrooms on the video was first released, it's hard to pinpoint exactly another movie that operated in the same manner that original YouTube video did. The closest comparisons are video games, spaces where you as a character can wander around seemingly endlessly. Even way back when I remember that video game that was like a maze that was very lo-fi, and you'd just keep moving around a maze forever, as long as you could. And so this kind of thing existed there, and that's where he gets a lot of his inspiration, is in video games. But as a movie, there's not a lot of references you could point to in that way. So
no, and I think the parts where Backrooms falters are the parts where it is trying to be more like a regular movie and trying to set up these characters and their backstories, their like motivations and psychology, and doing it in pretty cliched and not very detailed ways. But no, I think that the best stuff is that stuff that comes from his YouTube videos he was doing already. Like, I kind of feel like each generation of filmmakers sort of reinvents filmmaking for themselves a little bit. Like, I think filmmaking is something that you end up coming to from some space outside of it. Like it's not something where you like apprentice in making films, like some people go to film school, but like I think the artists that have the most success and end up rising to the top are often just people who are inspired and finding ways to make stuff and whatever's like available to them. And right now that's the internet, and that's someone like Kane Parsons making, basically animated films that he designed in like Blender. Or it's like Curry Parker and his friends making like social media skits, YouTube skits, basically, and then branching out into horror stuff and more feature-length stuff.
One interesting thing about that, I was just going to say, is I didn't even know that Curry Parker, didn't even know of him. And now suddenly he's popping up in my YouTube algorithm, meaning that his videos are probably have an uptick of viewership due to the movie. So, one successful creation after another will feed the previous creations. You know what I mean? That can be the case with somebody who's created a few movies already and then has one kind of bigger hit. And then people will go back and watch what they did before or something.
Yeah. I think there are a lot of people like him, just making internet videos that we don't see because it's pretty easy to do that.
There's just so much, yeah.
But the Backrooms thing is interesting because like this was a concept and something that existed before Parsons started making his videos, and then pretty much as soon as he started posting these on YouTube, they got a lot of traction, and I think they just kind of snowballed and ended up in front of the eyes of like actual film producers and stuff who decided to reach out to him. And he heard from a ton of people. The producer list on this film is just like a phone book of different people. James Wan is involved, Osgood Perkins.
Wow.
And just like, I don't know, it's interesting to hear him talk about it. He was able to pretty easily scale up what he was doing to make his videos, to make then a full feature film, because he designed all the backroom sets and stuff for this movie in Blender the same way that he made those videos. And then he gave that to a production team who made all the practical sets out of it. I don't know. I find that the film wasn't as ambitious as I expected it to be. It kind of felt like just one of those videos expanded to feature length.
Well, I would, I kind of agree, but I would actually say it didn't. So I think part of the trap of a film setting for this was, let's say it'll employ the experimental quality that the videos did that he was doing for YouTube, but it wants to now be something made for the big screen, and you have a whole history of big budget, or at least like, larger budget movies where if it's for a wider audience, it's going to be played across the country, across the world. I think creators think that the audiences today are expecting certain things. But what I found was strange was either it didn't want to be a movie, because it did employ the experimental quality somewhat, but it also didn't want to just go into the experimental quality entirely. I think actually what my takeaway a little bit on that is it could have gone much more experimental. I think people were going to see this because they appreciated what he was doing with the videos. So why not have us on the big screen really be, more frightened with kind of longer takes of this kind of space that feels like a void that we all somehow relate to because it reminds us of the internet or other things, So I feel like, yeah, I wouldn't want to go to this movie to see more of the same thing that he was doing, but I did want to see more. I wanted the moments that felt like we were in the back rooms in the void to be longer,
Yeah. I ended up feeling like, you had the sort of separate prologue part at the very beginning, but beyond that, it kind of felt like we had only two really kinetic, like, exciting sequences. The one with the camcorder, where the Clark character, played by Chiwetel Ejiofor, where he gets the two employees to come in with him, and then, ends up chased into that one room where he hears his wife, like that whole sequence. And then you have kind of the end sequence where Renata Reinsva's character, goes in after him. But like for a hour 50 movie, it felt like that was kind of like 20 minutes of it between those two sequences. So it felt very slow, and it was interesting to focus on these characters that did feel very like cliched,
I think one of the issues, I'm just trying to think of it now, I think one of the issues is, obviously you mentioned those producers who have made a reputation for themselves. Osgood Perkins as one of those. But the writer on this thing, and I don't know what that kind of relationship was, why they chose this guy to do the writing, but this is actually another one of my critiques of the thing, was that Will Sudduck Sudik. I don't know how you say his last name. He's a writer for shows, so he's written a few episodes on TV shows. And yeah, you're not left with an obvious cliffhanger necessarily. But I did get the sense that, okay, what if Kane, I'm sure, has more, he wants to do more with this idea. And so this is kind of how I felt after, was this just kind of the long pilot episode of a series that they're going to try to do with this whole thing? And if that's the case, I do feel like I appreciate the difference between movies and TV. I don't love when they merge, because I think they each have different qualities that one can go to them for. So with a movie, it's nice when it's one package, that it's a standalone piece that's, you don't expect to have to be left wondering what's going to happen next. You can do that with a TV show. And then I saw an interview with Kane, and he was saying basically that is the plan, to do a series of some kind, because there's more to do that he's planning on. And so then I kind of felt a little bit like, was this just like funding? Is this just more traction and more funding for more content? And even though it can stand on its own, I don't know. I feel like that blurring the line between like this being a movie, but kind of a movie to generate more, funding and attraction for a show. Just, I don't know. Something about that just rubs me the wrong way a little bit. And especially being the case that the writer on this thing was a TV show writer. No big deal or anything, and it could have worked, but I think part of the reason why it doesn't work is because of those factors.
I think that's correct to hit upon. Yeah. I mean, this stuff is very blurred at this point, especially for people like Parsons who have grown up in the world of accessing everything through the internet and maybe interfacing more with like YouTube videos than you would ever like sit down and watch a movie by itself, or watching like TV shows. Before he did the Backrooms stuff, he was making fan videos for Attack on Titan, where he like animated the Titans photorealistically and put them in like 30s and 40s like footage. Mm-hmm. He's a guy who's big into YouTube, and I don't think he thinks in terms of like movies, really. No. Another thing he said was that he makes his videos, and he made the movie to be paused and analyzed. Like, that's a very different way to think about this stuff, where you want it to serve as a kind of meta mystery for the audience to like pick apart. And I think you kind of miss the forest for the trees. Like, you get very good actors in this to play these parts and emote on screen, but they just feel like they're pushing the buttons. Like, there's not really a connection to a human story here. That was the issue, I think.
Yeah. Okay. So, well, in that case, then I'll say it's kind of sort of like a loose thought that I have about it. A reference to a film that it kind of follows a similar trajectory of, I would say, is The Shining. And so part of the reason why I say that is that I noticed that earlier on in the movie, there's a therapy session that he has. And in that therapy session, in brief glances, he looks directly at the camera. And so some YouTube creator or person who's talking about films noticed about a few years ago now that Jack Nicholson's character in The Shining does that throughout the movie. It had been noticed that he does look at the camera in one particular moment in The Shining, but this guy noticed actually he does it all the time, and he like freeze framed all the different moments when he does it, and it's very haunting because it's like a quick glance, and most people didn't know he did that. So it's this like very creepy subliminal kind of subconscious thing where Jack Nicholson's character, by looking at you just briefly, is breaking that fourth wall. He is kind of getting you to be a part of his psyche in a way that you don't even really notice. And so I'm watching this movie, and in that therapy session, the character Clark, he's looking around as he's talking, but in brief moments he looks right at the camera. While Renee's character Mary, as a therapist, she's just looking directly at him. She's just looking away from the away from the camera and at him. But he looks at the camera, and I noticed this, and I was kind of like, whoa, kind of like was creepy to see that. And then he does it again. And so that creeped me out. And then I started thinking, he is this guy who finds a place that goes very deep and it's very liminal, much like The Shining, where the setting is this large hotel that's void. And then he meets people that aren't real. And then they have a kind of a dinner, and he ends up chasing Renee's character. Well, not him, but his alter ego. And you could say that's similar to Jack Nicholson's alter ego. But again, I'm thinking of this in terms of the, pausing the movie to analyze it. With Kubrick, there's something he's operating on a different level, of course. He's a masterful director of films. So to hide details in a film the way he does, like you said, there's many other elements that Kubrick's doing, like the relational aspect. You come to know Kubrick's insanity because of the way that story's told and the way the relationships unfold, the character study is. And with this, it's like if The Shining is an inspiration to the way this character, the arc happens and the way the story unfolds, it still just feels like it feels like you took a YouTube sensation and then you wrote. It feels to me, and I don't know exactly why, but it just feels like a half-written, half-inspired story using this sensation, this online sensation, as the main draw. But the story itself feels much flatter than The Shining does, feels much flatter than many other things do. And you don't get this sense of, you don't get two things that it's either trying to be. The life of the characters or just more of the backrooms. You just kind of get half of each, and it ends up feeling like fun, but not like a full engrossing project that I wouldn't even want to go back and find any details in. You're going to have your diehard fans do that, but I don't have any desire to.
No, I also find that to be, sometimes curious to pass the time, but not that engaging. If you're building out some mythology that we're supposed to dig around and figure out, I struggle to imagine that that's going to be very interesting on its own.
I do have one friend, though. He did say that he's going back and watching a lot of the other videos that Kane made. I think he's made like more than 20 that all have to do with this place. And he's the kind of guy that he has the mind for those types of details. And he says that the more videos he watches, the more he appreciates the movie. So maybe there is something to that. But again, to make a movie means you do want to make it for the diehard fans and make it for the people who know nothing else about it. If you want it to be if you want it to be like fully successful, otherwise it'll have like a cult following.
Right. Like the measure of the success of this will really be if he can build upon this and keep people coming back. And I think that would depend on creating interesting characters, creating a more involving story about actual characters. But this is a guy who likes, these ARGs and, internet-driven mythologies and stuff. So maybe that's just where he wants to stay, and this ends up being something that has a more narrow fan base. But it would probably still be relatively successful. If that's what it ends up being, I don't think these movies will continue to make as much money as this one has ended up making. But that would still be something that's relatively untapped in terms of films. So, that's something. I didn't see that Exit 8 movie. That was another one recently that was adapted from a Backrooms type game. I think there's a couple iterations. They might be made by the same Japanese developer, but these games where you walk through a room, you basically walk through a corridor or something, and you try to spot if there are certain differences, and either, decide to keep going or like go backwards. It's basically just like, level after level of the same corridor you're walking through over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
But with these kind of horror elements. I think the genre might have actually started with that Kojima game. What was that called? It was like a tech demo. It might have been for free on like the PS3 or PS4. I think it came out between his Metal Gear games and then the Death Stranding games, and I'm trying to find it still. PT. This was 2014. It was originally supposed to be kind of a teaser for a Silent Hill game, and I think this stuff and the type of internet stuff that Parsons is drawing from is very inspired by the Silent Hill games as well. But this kind of like demo or teaser was just like you as the character walking through one little like hallway of a house, and it changing each time you walked through it. And it really grabbed people because there seemed to be like thousands of iterations of what could happen in this hallway. Sometimes, someone spooky would come out and chase you, or sometimes there would just be a new picture has shown up in the picture frame that's on the table in the hallway or stuff. But it was a big kind of success when that came out, and I think the like Exit 8 games and that movie that came out of that are all kind of inspired by that game, I think.
Yeah, and all of this is kind of it's all coming at this moment where there's this uncanny valley experience we have online now with the AI stuff where, we might be going about our normal day, our normal internet routine, kind of looking at various things, and then all of a sudden you see kind of this like kind of thing that looks off, like a video or something. It just seems off, and you're like, God, that's got to be AI. This is like very disconcerting, and these games have that quality to them where or any game really, because you're just in a different reality, especially a horror game. You're in a different reality, and you're going about it. You're going down that hallway, let's say in Exit 8, and you got to look for the thing that feels off. What's the off thing here? Something very terrifying about that. Like, again, with Backrooms, what could have been employed more is this feeling of this place feels off. Not jump scares, not like there's some monster throwing a sign in the room I was just in, or there's these alter ego personas that are devilish or whatever, but just a sense of this place feels wrong. I don't know what it is. I do think that there's a market for that. I wonder if with that original video, if people were drawn to it more because there was some weird creature that ended up following the guy, or because it was some weird space that you felt like never ended, and the fact that it might never end is what's creepy, and you don't know the way out. Like those, I don't know, that element seems much more unique. And yeah, I would say to any creative or to Kane going forward, it's just lean into that. There's another video that Kane did. It's called The Oldest View, I think. And it's all mostly set in a mall. And to get to the mall, the character, it starts off with real footage of like rural kind of foresty area. And then the character is talking about how he found this tunnel. So he goes into it, and it just goes down, down, down forever. So he does a good job kind of going from footage that's real, a shot of real trees, to this footage of like a tunnel that goes down through the rock. It all seems pretty seamless. And then by the time you get to the bottom of this tunnel, you're in this old mall. And the mall feels real. There's moments where you can kind of tell it's not real, but it, for the most part, feels very realistic. And it's like 25 minutes or something like that of just being in this dark, like completely empty mall. And there is a level of like, there's something very enticing about that. Something very, it draws people in, Again, do we need this jump scare created by some entity within that? I would just argue, I'm not sure. I would say maybe creep people out without a jump scare and see if that works. But I don't know. That's just me. Well, actually, the whole psychological thing, that was quite flat. There's doors you can open, and consciousness has a lot of doors you can open, and things like that. It's like
that the ending when she yells at him, it's just like, you blame your wife, you blame your job, you blame your brain, it's you. Well, that was so goofy.
Right. Yeah, and to get to that point too, we don't have enough understanding of his decline. And I thought that was, what I was just saying was, hold us in that void for a little longer. Terrify us with the feeling that all this is wrong in some way, and it's a large void. Like, instead of so many jump scares or too much of that, or even another creature at all. So I say that because, like, his character, Clark's character, he goes in, he then takes the two employees in with him, and they all disappear. We don't know what happens to them, and then we cut to Renate's character. Well, that was truly not done that well, where he somehow explores a ton of this place, and he doesn't get eaten like the other guy does or whatever. I just don't know. It's like, man, for being such a large empty void, this place does feel small the way it was done. You just have that one shot like you did with the original video where you have suddenly you can see the levels. You see that space where you go to where you can see the levels. But I think people want to see, I guess what they're doing, and I guess the genius of Kane is that he's showing us bits and pieces of this huge place. And there is a cult following that are trying to figure out what it is and how deep it goes. There's videos online that are like, what's at level 666 and like how many levels are there? And so that's fun for the kids, But again, as a movie, I don't want to just jump from kind of a regular guy trying to figure out what this place is to like completely engulfed in it and like become one with it suddenly. It's just too much of a jump for not enough time, seemingly. And unfortunately, more flat writing that doesn't take much to change. Again, I just think like have an experience that's sort of longer, make us sit with this place longer. I don't know.
Yeah, I know. It's they came up with certain ideas and then didn't really figure out ways to connect those ideas, and so it did really feel like a jump. Now he's like this villain. Now he's totally figured out how it works, and he loves it. And he lives there.
Yeah,
we could have gotten there more. You can eat them.
You can somehow, and he figures that out somehow. That's astonishing. Like,
yeah, it comes back to this way of thinking about like narrative and stuff like this in a different way, because you grow up with this stuff on the internet. Like her coming upon the weird drawing on the wall, like that was very Portal or Half-Life, which are games that he specifically has cited.
Mm-hmm.
But that works in a game when you are the one stumbling upon it and you are able to spend as much time as you want studying it. And I just felt like it did not have the same effect in a film. We're just sitting there looking at the character, looking at this thing. Like, what are they getting out of it? Like, what are we supposed to be getting out of it? It does not have that sense of discovery that something like that has in a video game. So that's just like a kind of clumsiness in like porting over these ideas into something that we watch in a movie theater. Maybe he'll continue to have that clumsiness as he makes more stuff, or maybe he'll kind of find ways to make it more interesting as a film itself. Because the instincts towards like making stuff that's unsettling, that's all there. Like he's got talent for that stuff, and I think like that handheld camcorder section in the middle was great. that almost just felt like he made one of his videos and put it in the middle of the film.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I feel like there's many elements to this thing that worked on its own. Like the thought that the way the camera moves, even the movement of the camera within the space, that's not the found footage, I thought was well done in an intriguing way. And I do think that the actors are great actors, of course. It really comes back to could the writing bring all the elements together? And the answer is no, not really. I think it succeeds in all these other ways that feel separate from each other, unfortunately.
Yeah. It did make me think of two other filmmakers who feel like they come out of similar internet spaces and they're very literate in the internet and 4chan forums and stuff. And those were Jane Schoenbrunn and Louise Weird. Schoenbrunn made I Saw the TV Glow, but their previous film, We're All Going to the World's Fair, was much more about like being on the internet and following this character who was very alone and who was like seeking out connection on the internet. And I think that film succeeded because that character, like Schoenbrunn, was able to relate to that character more and probably put more of some real life experience into that. Whereas like these characters do not feel like they relate at all to like Parsons' experience. So I don't feel like he knows what to do with them or what to say about like a middle-aged alcoholic man or a therapist that with this trauma from her childhood and stuff. Like, you can make a film about being a solitary person on the internet. I think that's what We're All Going to the World's Fair shows. And I think that's a little more of a successful film. And Louise Weird, who made a castration movie, also really incorporates the way people kind of talk to each other and have trouble connecting because they're learning behaviors from the internet and stuff and thinking too much in the way that you like think on the internet. Like castration movie feels like it's very like autobiographical or at least lifted from real life experience as well. And that's much more a film about interpersonal relationships, but it's about young people and it just feels like a real world story, even though it's about people who are too internet brained.
Yeah.
And then this film, it feels like a Backrooms generated movie, sort of. It's almost fun because of that it feels pretty generic, but I don't know that that's necessarily what they wanted to go for.
Well, the only reason why it might be to some extent is that it's convenient that there is no real there's not a lot of people in the real world, in the normal world. There's no shoppers. There's a homeless guy in the parking lot. There's very few extras walking around. It's mostly kind of a void of a place on the ground level, which is convenient on one hand because there's no cops to start an investigation as to where these people went missing, and you just have less to deal with in terms of writing. At the same time, it does give this feeling that like not only are the Backrooms a kind of weird, strange place that feels off, but so is the normal world, and where it feels strange and minimal, and it feels normal, but there's something really off about its normalness. Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, and I think that does well to evoke like, I don't know, why the Backrooms like eeriness is rooted in something real world. Why we can step into just a regular building and have some sense of like uncanniness there. It doesn't have to literally be fantastical backroom space to feel somewhat uncanny.
Well, the one other thing I'll say too is that the clouds in some of the other elements too, but specifically the clouds did not look real. And I feel like at this point of anything that you create with CGI, one of those things would be clouds. I mean, I can pop clouds into, they try to market it to me on the software I use for photography all the time. But these clouds did not feel real. And then there was a shot at the end where she's in this room, this like office room, and she's like, where am I? The scientist guy hops out, and she looks out the window, and you see the clouds out that window again. And it almost gave me this feeling of like, is she looking out to like another simulation kind of feeling? Like one of those feelings again, like was the real world just like a simulation, and how more and more people, you can come back to that philosophy or that idea that the real world itself could be some kind of simulation designed by some, tech world that we don't have any connection to, the Matrix, so to speak. So are they just really, the Backrooms just another Matrix within a world that had been a Matrix all along? Yeah. But again, if that's the case, again, if that is the case, it just doesn't do it. It doesn't do it well. It just, it goes, if it does that, it's just doing that because it's almost fun to do. Actually, that's another thing, is it just kind of feels like the whole thing is kind of fun. Even if it goes deep and there's all these details that Kane is placing here and there, the whole thing just kind of feels like a kid's project, and he is young, so that's why that would feel that way. But
no, I think the thing is, if it is the case that it's like a simulation, it doesn't feel real enough actually to make that like unsettling. I think from the start, it kind of feels artificial. It feels like a movie.
Right.
So yeah, almost from the other end, it's not doing what it wants to.
Yeah. And so you mentioned Obsession. That was a movie where, for some reason, that one felt different to me. And I'm not a huge horror guy. I'm trying to watch more horror in the next year here. I kind of want to get into it more. But I felt like with that one, it was the acting that Navette or something like that. I don't know her name.
Yeah, Indy Navarrete.
Yeah, I felt like the way she played that role and how that was an indication of like just the horror of somebody becoming too obsessed with you. It was just very, I don't know, I found it very intriguing. I think it helps that I went with two people who enjoyed it, and one of them is very reactive, like very expressive in his reactions to the various things. But that's one where I personally felt like I could watch this character in this relationship on a terrifying level. Not that it was amazingly done or anything, but I did feel more into the characters. I felt more into the relationship itself and the horror that could come from that kind of situation, and appreciated the way that it ended in some sense. But I can see why both of these projects are not, incredible films, meant to be remembered as great classics or anything, but they're hitting something, like you said, and they're doing something interesting.
Yeah. I definitely felt watching Backrooms like my audience was kind of tuning out a little bit at parts, but I felt like at Obsession, everyone was pretty locked in with it. And for me, I did find a lot to be frustrated with just in terms of the filmmaking. I did not love the look of it and how it was kind of like edited, and the scenes kind of will jump, like it'll like jump between scenes, and stuff you might expect to be focused on was not focused on. But I definitely thought the underlying ideas in Obsession were very interesting to think about. And yeah, that performance was really great. And I think it was just the like clips of that performance of Indy Navarrete's online that got people out to see it, I feel like, because it was so like surprising and kind of unlike other stuff that you might see.
Yeah. I would say like that moment when the money falls from nowhere, that's a moment that for me like loses me a bit. That's like kind of like a crack in the wall for me, like where I'm like, I don't know how serious this is being taken in a way. Like it's all kind of funny in in some sense, like it's over the top in certain moments. But that when that happened, I was like, okay, what are we actually doing here? And so I don't know.
There's some on one hand, I kind of appreciate that sort of tone where sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's really disturbing. Like it all feels like it comes back from, or it like originates with like Hereditary and the films that came after that.
Yeah. Right. Well, with the money thing, like I immediately had like a better, or maybe not better, but I just immediately thought like, why show that? Because that's so cartoonish. And you could easily just like have had him crack the wish stick and then nothing happens, right? That character still just is let down because he didn't wish for what he was asking him to wish for. And then later that guy could come back and say, dude, I have $1 billion in my account. Like a money could magically appear in my account for no reason. That's much more realistic feeling. To have actual cash just like falling from the sky is just not serious. It really is that's something that you can do in a show or like just a pure kind of goofy comedy. But yeah, like there's other ways to get the point across than cartoonish elements, I guess. Unless that's what you're going for, is just all cartoonish elements.
Yeah, I think someone pointed out that the like customer service line and how disaffected the person on the phone is talking about whether you can like take the wish back or not, like kind of points to like where this tone comes from, this sort of Gen Z thing where like they can't get away from irony. Everything has to be a little like ironic, Like there's something in the filmmaking where, I don't know, it's self-conscious, We're going to point out how ridiculous this is when the ridiculous things happen, sort of. And I think like the audience seems to respond well to that. Like they like feeling like they're in on this joke. I mean, it's almost similar to that 60s and 70s humor that we talk about, something like Doctor Strangelove or Barry Lyndon. Like there's something with the irony about this where we're not playing this totally straight. Seems to be what these filmmakers are interested in and what the audience responds to. But I do agree with you. I like it is disappointing to me a little bit, and it makes it feel like I should take the film less seriously.
Yeah, it made me question it. It made me question that for sure. Like how serious should I take these films when they do things like that? But ultimately, I gave it a decent rating, and I think I wrote this that I thought that the kind of protagonist swap that happens where you really feel like the male character is the protagonist, but truly he was the villain the whole time, and because he's the one that curses her, and you find out towards the end that whoever she really is, her soul or whatever, was trapped inside kind of an exorcist type of thing, and she was trapped inside of she was possessed by this kind of demon that he cursed her with. So yeah, the elements were enough for me to be intrigued by, but the elements with Backrooms not exactly the same.
Yeah. With the obsession stuff, like your mileage is going to vary, I think. This kind of ironic horror is sort of its own genre now. And you can engage with it, and there's interesting ideas there. And I definitely, it's generating this discourse where people want to talk about what it says about consent and what we want or expect from relationships and stuff like that. Like it's interesting to talk about that stuff.
What was that movie that came out with that couple? It was called Together. That kind of hit. That hits at that a little bit, where the horror is that when you get close together, you literally morph into each other. So you gotta get the chainsaw out. I didn't see it.
I didn't see it either. But I think I do appreciate films like that and Obsession that are thinking more about like modern relationships and stuff more than the Backrooms trauma thing that it's decided to reach for. like these characters are just going to be defined by their traumas. Like, let's maybe stop doing that so much in horror. It's a little more interesting to think about what do relationships look like now, and what's going on with like connection, human connection, and the difficulties people are having with that right now.
The other problem that Backrooms will have is it's already being replicated, which is kind of funny in a way, a sort of meta thing there, that it can be easily replicated. So I guess McDonald's, it looks like. Did you see this at all? McDonald's.
Oh, I did not look at this because I hadn't seen the film yet, so I didn't want to. I assumed it was like a tie-in. Was it not associated with the film?
I don't think it's associated with the film. Yeah, I don't think it is at all. I think it's because yellow walls in a large office-looking space, there's no copyright on that. It's not like, you can't. Kane could have never copyrighted the space that's created. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So somebody at McDonald's thought it'd be funny to recreate that same exact space, but put like little McDonald's like elements within it. And so it feels like a handicap or a handy cam, lost footage video inside the back rooms with McDonald's stuff. Bizarre. Yeah. But I think it's almost one of those things where you create a thing that points to something, and there's this tendency for that thing to actually create what it's pointing to. So the fact that we're going to now see like many, many variations of Backrooms is a sort of, it's a meta reflection back on itself.
And Kane himself did not even create it. He, it
was somebody else posted that photo?
Yeah. No, it was like a 4chan post of an image that had already been on the internet for a long time. Like,
I see.
Yeah. He himself is just, his stuff's one point in this chain. And it's going to be interesting, decades from now to see what remains, what part of this whole cloud of different media like people care about, like what's going to be the easy rider of all the, dozens of like biker films that came out of the 60s. Like what's going to be the canonical Backrooms media,
Yeah. Yeah, well, there's there's tons of Backrooms wikis, where
there are video game mods.
Yeah,
where you can run around the back rooms. Yeah, wow. There's so much stuff.
Yeah, it's like so weird how meta that is. It's like it blows my mind. Like it makes me. It's one of those things where first of all, I am like, wow, I'm like amazed by it. And then I'm immediately like, I don't even care. Because if I cared even an ounce, that might lead me to like some video a guy does about how deep it really goes. And then I might read something, and then you can just see it never ends for these people. But it gives them something to do. And so fun for them.
Yeah.
Just creating your own Backrooms. And I think like the idea of this movie, they may have should have taken a little bit more time to flesh out some of the details.
Yeah,
some of the story. But
what was that? No, Asudik and one of the producers that it said had done some passes on the script before they gave Sudik sole credit. Roberto Patino, he also worked on Westworld with Will Sudik. So they're both like TV guys. I did not see a source, but I saw some stuff where Parsons was saying that, I don't know, it wasn't necessarily the script that he wanted. Like he maybe wish he hadn't okayed the script. Mm-hmm. This very much feels like a test, and it'll be interesting if he decides to go in a much different direction on future stuff.
That's kind of... Oh, that's what it is. That's what it is, and that's what bothers me just slightly, is it did feel like a test. It felt like a test that they could do because they had such a devoted fan base and the kind of clout from the YouTube stuff. So it kind of felt like, I thought I was going to go watch something that was a little bit more thought out, a little more kind of intentionally crafted. And instead, that was kind of how I felt. I was like, oh, this was just sort of another test, so it's just going to be tests all the way down? Or are we ever going to get an actual, full creative, very tight project? Or is it just going to be tests all the way down?
It's impossible to predict. I think that my hope would be that, like, this was him figuring out these variables of, like, how do you work with a whole crew? How do you work with professional actors? In his interview on the A24 podcast with James Wan, I mean, he talked about wanting someone who wanted to have everything planned out, to be able to control everything. Like, that's just kind of his personality. And yeah, the hope would be, now that he knows how to control that stuff, like literally knows how to make a movie in the way that he just didn't know before making this, that he'll do exactly what he wants on the next one. And he won't just settle for, like, I don't know, a kind of another half-baked episode in the Backrooms world.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I'd hope to see that. I mean, yeah, I guess in that sense, start smaller, start more experimental in that way, or use the resources that you have available at the age that you're at. And then, yeah, that might mean, like, that things go up. That you do end up creating something even better. Because it is the case, too, that it can sometimes happen where someone creates something really amazing, their first go-around, and then it's hard to follow up from that. So, yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. This might be a thing of expectations, too. Like, it feels like it was intended to be, a low-budget, low-risk thing, and that they realized it was tracking really well, and they just started pumping, marketing money into this thing, and the expectations kind of grew and grew. But they might have kind of approached this thinking, this will be a test, and we'll see what this kid does with a relatively low budget and stuff.
And I will say that he did a pretty decent job on the music that he made, that he partially did. He worked with somebody else on that. But yeah, very talented guy. So yeah, I look forward to seeing what else he does. But you're right to watch those expectations.
Yeah. Well, one thing I wanted to bring up that I'm still grappling with between this and Obsession, is that these films now more and more are being shot with the majority of the shots being, like, center framed. You saw this in, like, Sinners. I feel like this was a Longlegs thing, Osgood Perkins, and I don't know what to think of it now. It seems like audiences don't care, really. I've seen some people who are more into reading the film theory and stuff that are really upset about this and feel like it just, like, doesn't use the frame as well as, like, classical filmmakers have used it. And it does, like, there's that nagging sense that maybe it's, like, influenced by wanting to port this stuff over to the phone, to, like, the internet, social media, because if it's center framed, it's easy to put it in a like a square aspect ratio and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still unsure about how to feel about it. There was a couple really interesting shots that weren't center framed in Backrooms, but when a lot of it is just staring straight at the character on screen, it can get kind of boring, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And it can become an issue. I don't know.
Yeah, and I know there's some movies, like a lot of the framing in Closely Watched Trains. Is that what it was called? That was kind of it wasn't center frame, but it was very straight on, very cleanly shot. But it was a kind of a comedic movie, so that bodes well for that. It's sort of Wes Anderson-esque in that way. But I know, there's many photographers, many cinematographers who've said, put the subject or the horizon at the bottom or the top, because that's much more interesting. If the horizon's in the center of the frame, it is just the most. It's just not interesting. There's just no other way to put it.
Yes, you still have to watch Fablemans because this gets said in a scene that I won't spoil, but everyone is yelling at their podcast right now if they've seen the Fablemans that literally comes up in that. But this is also an anecdote that Spielberg had given before that movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's
the other thing too is the other thing people are commenting on a lot is with Obsession. I think that was doing that too. Is just this like tighter focus, so you end up with less detail in the background. And a lot of movies do that these days too. It's just a little. It's gotten to be just a bit much. Yeah.
It has. Like give us some of that deep focus. Let's feel like we're in a world.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess the Backrooms obviously needs to, so it does. It is deep focus a lot of the time when you're in the Backrooms at least. But yeah, the cinematographers these days, there's a feeling that they are playing things safe, I guess, and they're making things look kind of perfect. Everything kind of feels too perfect. That's another thing is like, who is on the production? Are all these guys gearheads who are just worried about the lights? And if there's like, some of these production sets I've seen have like 1,000 lights and the camera's got those lenses and they're like, everything is perfect. And then the final product is it juicy, that final product? I mean, and we're comparing this perfection to some of these great films people still go to the theater to see again decades after they'd been shot. Things like Cassavetes and Godard and all the others who they didn't make perfect films, and because they weren't perfect, we love them. We don't love them despite their imperfections. We love them because they're imperfect. So what does that say? I mean, what does that say about these guys who are trying to make these perfectly shot scenes? It's like, maybe do some more handheld and maybe do some more dark shots, take some risks and get rid of the lights and get rid of the best camera ever used,
And the formats too, like that's the other motivation is they want to show it in IMAX. They want to show it in a super like CinemaScope narrow format. And so they center frame it so it can fit every single format. And like, I don't know, maybe, you're trying to make it too perfect there.
Yeah. And I mean, speaking of Backrooms, the whole allure of the original video was that it was lost footage, which means that it's shot on a cheap camera. It wasn't actually, but it looks like it was shot on a VHS Handycam. So the very allure that brought people into this video originally, if Kane had somehow he rented a camera, or let's say he somehow created the Backrooms, the original video, to look realistic, but used like a very high definition, high quality camera, I doubt there would have been the same allure. I highly doubt it. It would have more likely been the case that people would have said like, this looks like a video game. But because he made it look like lost footage, it's like, wow, this is intriguing. It's got the fuzz and this, the glitching happening. That imperfection is what drew people into it. So yeah, do you lose that quality when you have this like perfectly panning high quality camera work?
Yeah. This could have been more Blair Witch than The Shining, And if it felt a little more uncontrolled, maybe it would have been even more exciting.
That's great. The horror of not finding your way out is a much more Backrooms thing to do than the horror of like getting lost in it and becoming actually a lover of the space.
Yeah.
Like, I love it in here. Like, that becomes it becomes like, if you did that, you'd have to spend more time doing it and get your script to be more character focused in order for us to really be more creeped out by his character. And when that happens, rather than just kind of weirded out. Because that whole scene with the dinner, you're just kind of like, what is going on here? You don't know. It's too jarring. But, with something like The Shining, you get there and you're like, you've gotten there with him to some degree. And that's what's very terrifying about it. Here, yeah, I would have much rather seen a movie where we spend much of the time in this void and we can't get out. And and it's lost footage most of the time, Blair Witch style most of the time. Yeah. But again, like you said, it's an experiment that they're trying.
Yeah.
That we won't see the end. I mean, this is going to be the next 5 years. You're going to just see, it's going to be a lot of Backrooms, memes, and various stuff. So
when we get the first like politician referencing Backrooms, that's when we'll know we've jumped the shark.
Yeah. I mean, if this was a real kind of world, by the way, the one that they are from, if it isn't a simulation that they come from originally, then, at some point you would imagine that like some kids find out about this place, kind of reminds me of the Scientology teens who are like running through this kind of locked down area. At some point it would be like, if there's a show here and this continues in some way, like you'd have to imagine that like a bunch of people would start like living down there and figuring out how to go down there.
That's funny.
Or like, yeah, it would become a whole thing. Like if it was in the real world, like, someone caught onto this, like you'd first hear about it online. There'd be some guy being like, what is this place I found? And then kids would find a way into it since there's multiple ways in. And then, there'd be people down there and a whole thing. It'd be a whole thing. But in this world so far that Kane has created, not the case. Everyone who goes in dies, I think.
Yeah. But
somehow they have lost footage. Yeah.
Everyone keeps bringing in cameras and then they get dropped and discovered or whatever.
But like in this movie at the end, these people must have like some family. Again, unless it's a simulation, these people have family. So they'd be like, I don't know, they went missing. And like, where was the last time you saw them? It was in this place. Okay. Suddenly you have a whole investigation into it.
But that's the thing. We don't know how far this goes. Is that company tied in with the government? Are they covering this stuff up? I'm sure there's answers, but
yeah. Isn't that interesting how there's something there about how somebody can come upon an interesting idea and create kind of a fascinating, sensational short film from that idea, and then watch how that thing can become, what is the word, like a parody of itself, Like it can't sustain itself. It's I don't know, there's something weird about how that can happen sometimes. The original idea was interesting. The original project is fascinating and fun to watch and fun to see how it affected everybody online. Created a whole community there. But then it falls into the exact same sort of paths that everything else ever falls into. All other lore that's ever been made of anything. So there's a Harry Potter wiki and a Lord of the Rings wiki and fan fiction on all that stuff. And it always kind of just repeats itself. Every one of those wikis will feel the same at some point because stories have a recurring format. There's, as it's been said, there's only a number of different types of stories. And so even something that is like so surreal and strange as this, that's just this space that someone fell into and goes on forever, becomes the same. It will inevitably become the same sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like you couldn't do. I mean, just the final thing I'll say is like, did a Shining-esque story, was that the best possible story that could have been thought of for this first movie? Or could they have leaned into some sort of more the existential horror of the place? I think actually, the more I think about it, and the more I'm talking about it, the less I appreciate
it. Yeah. There's a lot of meat on that bone still, I think. I don't know how many people are going to do interesting original stuff with it, but there's someone can crack that nut still, I think.
That's what it feels like. Yeah. And it might be Kane, it might be someone else.
Yeah.
Oh, Mark Duplass.
Next.
Forgot that's who that was.
shows up.
But yeah, next, what do we got?
Well, yeah, next up will be our episode on Suspiria. Yeah, we're talking Suspiria. We're staying in the horror space. We already recorded that one, but it was fun to talk about, where horror was at the end of the 70s there. I don't even remember what we really said on that one, but
Yeah.
Dario Argento,
Yeah.
another fantasy world, constructed world.
Fantasy world.
As always, you can read some stuff that Zach has written on the Substack. I'm not even going to claim that I've written anything for it because I haven't done that yet. And you can find our letterboxes and other things at unauthorizedpod.com. Yeah, you got anything else to add?
I got nothing else to add. But it's been good. So, yeah, tune in next time.
Peace.